I want to agree with you on the direction and the bumpy road. And the thing is, from our estimates, from our perspective, we think the bumpy road, like you are on the bumpy road, but that bumpy road is leading to the right direction. The thing is to make sure that you continue on it, like continue with the reform agendas, continue. You need to focus on revenues, you need to focus on proper financing, not distortionary financing. But just don't get scared of the bumps too much, just keep going. So that's the one thing I wanted to say. On the FX restrictions and the competitiveness. So yes, we do see the BOP numbers, and so first of all, I think removing the restriction from the 43 items was a good step, not only from a trade perspective, I would say, but also from an FX perspective. It was causing the fragmentation of the FX market, and that's primarily where the decision came from. We think, our view is, as the World Bank, that even if there is a trade policy on restricting imports, that should be done by customs, that should be done by Ministry of Commerce or the trade policy people, not CBN. That's not CBN's job. CBN's job is controlling inflation and deepening the financial markets. That is what the CBN is supposed to do. It's not supposed to be in quasi-fiscal schemes. It should not be doing that. It should not be implementing trade policy for the government. It should be just doing that. So I think that what our thing is, the 43 items, we hail that as a good reform because it helped reduce the fragmentation of the market. On the trade side, yes, definite improvements that we do think. We think removing trade restrictions in Nigeria can help people out of poverty because it helps keep the prices low. Now your Panadol example, right? We are hoping that if you allow cleaner, easier imports of Panadol, that 25 pence, Panadol can come here and it'll only be like something, right? If you saw an opportunity, it can come in and make it cheaper for you and other people to get Panadol. But because of all these restrictions, the supplier of Panadol can charge, whoever managed to bring it in first has to pay a lot of costs to get it in because of all the barriers. And then that cost ends up, and then they can charge whatever because there's no competition. They're not scared somebody else is going to pick up all those costs and come in. So we think that, yes, you can protect your own producers, right? If you keep the trade restrictions up, you protect your own producers. But you're doing that at the cost of your consumers. And that's the majority of Nigerians.
Private sector team, they are supporting, we have a project called SEBA, that's State Enabling Business Environment. So we go through some of those projects to assist states to create what they have competitive advantage in. Yes, you're right, so that they can also help to produce and export, but we have some structural barriers, affecting production and exports. For instance, you know that we have issues with infrastructure. That also affects our competitiveness. We've had issues. We've had stuff like, an average producer suffers. The cost of energy constitutes more than 50 or 30% of the cost of total business. Power is there, infrastructure is there, moving goods from one place to another is there. So we've heard stories of how it's difficult to import goods from Africa than importing from Europe, right? So we have some of the structural barriers that we think can be improved on, and with the African continental trade, we see a big potential that Nigeria can tap into, even at the subnational levels, right? So some of these states, they have, lithium is a fast rising product or commodity. They're trying to establish a lithium battery processing center in Nigeria. I think we have competitive advantages in those areas, and also the type of exports matters. Previously we've been doing a lot of agricultural exports. Does it generate large effects? Yes. No. Does it command much demand? Generally, Africa, we do more of commodities and agric. I think there are other avenues we can explore. To be more competitive and tap into the African continental free trade.
What more would you want to see the World Bank do for Nigeria, and in what specific areas?
I like that question.
Let me make it that short.
Yeah, I like your question so much because, while they were making their presentation, I was penning down some things. So I was asking myself if Nigeria's problem is macroeconomics. Monetary policy and the real sector, the real economy have parted ways long time ago. That whatever happens there doesn't really detect anything in the real sector. So I'm asking myself, in the Nigeria situation, economics is actually is no longer the right-hand variable. It is now the left-hand variable. In fact, it's the dependent, not independent variable. So if you look at those factors that drive aggregate demand, whether it's the wealth effect, the interest rate effect, or the foreign exchange effect. So if you look at those three, what you observe is that, of course, it's inflation that determines that, the CPI, right? So when inflation is going on the way it has gone up, and then we know that the major contributing factor to that is government printing of money, and then inflation is that high, people's wealth, purchasing power has completely, dissolved. That's a weight effect, right? What is the impact on aggregate demand? Aggregate demand goes down. Then the interest rate effect, okay? Because of that, the interest rate that is matching up with inflation has gone up. How much is the cost of raising funds in Nigeria today? The cost of capital, has hit the roof. Then the exchange rate effect, of course, you know that, our naira has completely dissolved. Okay, so aggregate demand has shrunk and is telling on firms. So the threshold for profitability or viability in Nigeria today has gone up has gone so much up that only very few companies can survive, and we are seeing it. How many companies have left Nigeria in the past few days? We are talking about paracetamol. Unilever has closed shop. GSK has closed shop. How many others? There are so many teetering, at the verge of exit, from Nigeria because of the, I wouldn't say, as the reforms work, were they properly thought through? Okay, so. To clear the FX backlog. Why did they do that before they, embarked on the reform? So those were the kind of advice that I had expected the World Bank to give.
When we talk about macroeconomic stability, from reforms to renewed hope and results, what further things do you think we can do to achieve reforms? Because this pair of professionals from the World Bank have shown that we've achieved some measure of results, but it doesn't look like the surgery is going on too well as planned, or perhaps a bit of complications along the line.
Thank you very much, Bosin. I'm not sure that the surgery is going on well. The reason being that I think we are focusing on things that are secondary, not primary. So you talked about Tunisia, about tourism. The Economic Horizon wrote a report just a few days ago about how insecurity is causing havoc across Nigeria. Of course, somebody can come to Nigeria if we have a high level of insecurity. And if you look at inflation, a major component of inflation is food inflation. And people cannot go to farm if they are not secure. You can see the wave of insecurity across the board. Is how do you produce? So, and the only area we can produce is agriculture, which is actually an area of competitive advantage, and maybe oil and gas as well. But these two key sectors, oil and gas and agriculture, cannot grow because there is a high level of insecurity in the country. So what we are supposed to do is for government, now that we remove subsidy and liberalize the exchange rate, is to come out with a detailed policy on agriculture. Now we are in dry season. We are now moving very close to rainy season. We've not heard from the Minister of Agriculture. We are also talking about manufacturing. Where is the Minister of Trade, Investment, and all that? Where is the Minister of Power? What are they doing? What are the key policy directions on these areas? All of us are talking about foreign exchange, talking about inflation, talking about subsidy. So those are the things that we are supposed to do. And that's the areas we want World Bank to really help the government support or create or develop policies that can really support the government to go into agriculture. I'm sure you know how much Malaysia, Indonesia are making from palm oil and other products. Meanwhile, Nigeria, that is supposed that they took the seeds from, are not even making anything from agriculture. Rather, we are still importing different agricultural products.
Just a quick question before I go to Nida. I would have wished she answered the question. Inflation in Nigeria is about 28.9%. Yeah, according to Statistics Office. Does it feel like 28.9% in your pocket? In real terms? You're looking at data. In data, I trust. Everything else is. Everything I verify. But sincerely speaking, Egypt is looking at this year setting up the biggest textile factory in the world.
Exactly.
Egypt. Textile factory. So how much more in terms of FX liberalization, removing restrictions and developing non-oil sector will help us to ramp up on domestic production? You're talking about output now at about 3.1%. Over the last 8 years, some economists said we're just doing about 1.2, 1.0%, while population is about 3.something%. So we're just around the 7-8 years of farming, but then we're now going to the 7 years of productivity. So the gap between our productivity and our population growth, they're just like two parallel lines, and they're not. So I want to see how much more do you think we can get in terms of FX normalization? What more would you want to see from the central bank and the fiscal authorities coming together to help us achieve the types of agro-allied and other sectors we need to ramp up on very quickly to create jobs, those things you talked about, jobs, success, growth locally, so that we can decelerate insecurity?
Absolutely. So definitely agree with all the points made. Yes, growth is essential. Growth is important. The agriculture policy, we would absolutely welcome that. Oil production, looking at how to improve oil production, absolutely required. My only thing is not to ignore the macro stability elements. So yes, you've taken these two critical reforms, you're like, yes, now done. The thing is, it's not done yet. So just, yes, keep doing the structural barriers removal on side, but also keep making sure that your macro stability aspects are also in place. So for us, what we are presenting as part of the NTU is a 6-month look, right? Like from basically June till December, and seeing what the factors are. In this period, we can only analyze macro stability problems. So those are more short-term problems that Nigeria is facing. Yes, inflation, extremely huge problem that is destabilizing macro. That is something like globally agreed upon. FX volatility, definitely. Revenues. So what our aim is from this report was that you reach macro stability, and that's a necessary condition, as you mentioned, to get to looking at improved oil production, improved security even, I would say. And then you can then start focusing wholeheartedly on these aspects, because you don't have to worry about, oh, my prices are going to be rising by like month on month by like, I don't know, 1-2%, like month on month there's a change of that much, or yearly inflation is going to hit like 30%. You can stop worrying about those factors once you've looked at macro stability, and then focus clearly on growth. Like we are saying, macro stability, like FX stability, inflation stability, all of those are necessary conditions, they're not sufficient. And we are only looking at that little piece of the puzzle at the moment. And we think, yes, like FX improving that can definitely help on a lot of different factors for the economy, because again, that's not something that you have to worry about, that you've reached the stability, now focus on growth. That's what I'm looking at. On your 43 items, you had raised an issue. Is it a CBN problem? Is it the problem, the policy, or the problem that CBN is doing the policy? A little bit of both. So definitely we think that CBN doing the policy was causing fragmentation in the exchange rate market. We think it wasn't the CBN role, and yeah, China may be an exception to the rule, but like usually let's first do the job that you were assigned really well, and then maybe think about other things. So definitely, and because things like, for example, rice, right? Like rice was on this list. Why was it on the list? Because you want to help your rice producers or the big rice mills that you have. Now, But that's the only reason you put such policies in is because you know that your local prices are going to be high. That's why you put these protectionism policies in place. Because you know your producer is going to charge more than what the international market is doing. So who's the loser in all this? The Nigerian public that's going to eat that rice. They need to spend more now instead of, because suppose the foreign is expensive, right? You won't buy it anyway because it's more expensive.